Hi, I want to welcome everybody to tonight's Q&A guest speaker, Truman Hosner. I am so excited to present him. I met Truman personally at the International Association of Pastel Society convention in June of 2024, and I took a workshop with him, and I was actually quite in awe of the romance he creates in his figures, women outside on the beach by some rocks in landscape. It brings me back to another time like the 1890s, a time where life seemed a lot simpler and non-techy. So I felt very grateful for having that experience. I want to say a couple words about Truman. He was born in Detroit. He earned his BFA at Wayne State University, studied illustration at the Center for Creative Studies, the College of Art and Design in Detroit, and eventually returning to teach. In the interim, after 20 years of professionally illustrating for major companies, he rededicated himself to fine art painting, especially on plein air, painting outside, painting what was in front of him in real life. He's a major award-winning artist in several magazines, art groups, national and international museum shows. He teaches widely, and he authored The Act of Seeing and the Joy of Life. As an important note, when I read more about him, Truman has a very altruistic view toward others. For 10 years, he spent one day per month at Children's Hospital in Detroit, drawing portraits of young patients in their rooms. These are patients that were in really poor health. And he gifted the drawings to the patients, the kids, and their families. He also founded the Cafe Society Educational Scholarship Fund to assist Northern Michigan coffee house baristas with needed funds to pursue higher education. And in addition to other wonderful things he's done in being able to share his work and giving back to the public. One of the quotes that I really liked of what he said, there's a much deeper meaning to painting that is so much further behind the image you're seeing. It's getting to the thing in life you feel love toward that inspires you.
Hello, Sandra Burchell and the New Orleans Drawing Group. Welcome to my studio and home here in Ferndale, Michigan. I moved here from northern Michigan about 8 years ago to be closer to family, but also to take advantage of all the culture here in Detroit. For example, Ferndale is just a half mile from the city border of Detroit, and right located there, just a half mile from here, is Baker's Keyboard Lounge, which is a well-known jazz club. And I know, of course, in New Orleans, you know quite a bit about jazz. In addition, I'm only 15 minutes from the Detroit Institute of Art. But Ferndale itself is an interesting community because it reminds me a lot of Greenwich Village in New York City. There's a lot of artistic synergy. We have artists coming here from around the country. They find the combination of art community and affordable living very attractive. In fact, just across the street last fall, Still Life Ceramics studio opened, and they're originally from LA. Their first two stores were in LA, and they opened their third store here. Well, behind me I have three 32 by 40 inch pastel paintings of young women done along the beaches of northern Michigan. These were done on site from life. The young women modeled for me. And I thought I could talk about that a little bit tonight, what kinds of work I've put in over the years to be able to take on such an ambitious form of painting. But first I thought I could do a little walk through the studio. This studio is pretty much my ideal studio. It has north light windows and a lifestyle that replicates the warehouse work-live situation that I had in Traverse City, except it improves, and I'll explain. So the studio itself is a fairly long and narrow space, as you'll see here. And what we did was we found this building, and it was attached to the side of a very modest bungalow. But we installed 40 feet of true north light windows that affords us the luxury of painting by natural light if we so choose. Now, I mentioned that it improved on the lifestyle. One of the problems that I had in Traverse City in the work-live warehouse was that I could never get away from my work. But here, at the end of the day, 3 steps up and I'm in my home. And it's just separate enough to give me distance. If in the evening I choose to come back to work, it's just 3 steps down. The other beauty of this space is that in Michigan we have basements, and down in the basement where the furnace and the hot water heaters and all those facilities are, is the mat room, or the framing and shipping, and all of the production work can be done down there. The idea is to keep this as much as possible purely for creating art. And last year, friends from California came all the way here, and we installed this ceramic floor. But the important part of that is that there are 5 8-foot by 10-foot heating pads underneath. So the floor is warm, and when I have models in here, that's a very crucial thing because underneath there is concrete. In addition, in the backyard, we installed a privacy fence that creates a courtyard feel for us, and I can teach plein-air figure painting or plein-air painting right there in the privacy of the courtyard. So enough about the studio itself. Let me talk about all the drawings on the walls and what that's about. So one of the things with painting with pastel and drawing, I love the fact that they're really 2 very similar mediums. In fact, I've had a number of discussions with oil painters as to whether or not pastels are paintings, and I tell them tongue-in-cheek that painting's more a manner of thinking than a matter of media. But everything I do is meant to facilitate my work outdoors, and the figure drawings are a way of giving me insights into solving problems before I go out there. These are all timed drawings, and there's a reason for that. When I work from the model outdoors, they pose for 15 minutes at a time, 15 to 20 minutes, and then take a break. But there's no way, particularly outdoors with all the movement, that these young women can go back exactly into place. So I needed to learn a way to deal with change in movement by using a kind of incomplete discretion. And what I would say that means for me is that I pick and choose the essential and leave out the obvious or the detail. I also feel that drawing is not a separate thing from painting. It can be, but when I look at the work of Rembrandt, for example, and I see his pen and inks and washes and his etchings, I see the same kind of thinking in those that are in his oil paintings. So I try and replicate that for me. I don't do anything by rote. It all has purpose. These drawings are done in charcoal, of course, gives me a full range of value. It's studying light and shadow, simplification, connection, lines of connection in the figure. And these are 10 to 15 minute time drawings. I also work in Conte crayon and white chalk, and that takes me a step closer to full color painting without having to deal with color. Now, all of these ones to the left were done on site. In fact, this drawing up here was for a commission. And that's something that I began to do when I work with models outdoors is that I would do a Conte crayon and white chalk drawing just to relax myself and to relax them. It also would help me run into ideas that I might want to explore. By the way, these are done in 4 15-minute segments, and that's it. When I say a drawing is 5 to 10 minutes, I stop. When I say a drawing is 4 15-minute segments an hour, I stop. The reason being is that, painting is outdoors is very much a performance. Not a lot unlike a performance for a musician or an actor or whatever, because you're out there and you better be on. And you better learn to play through your mistakes, and you better learn to win the painting over a number of times if it starts to slip away from you. And so accuracy is absolutely crucial. The reason these drawings are up in the studio they're reminders of things that I think I did that worked particularly well, like these drawings of Susanna here, a really nice, succinct, clear vocabulary and movement. And those are reminders that that's something that I could incorporate into the bigger drawings. This is Leah Meyer and her little boy, Liam. Before I met Susanna and could spend my winters in California, by November, all of the figure painting and drawing outdoors came to an end. And it was about that time that I started my winter landscapes. but I did not want to lose my edge. So we continued forward with these sketches, and eventually they became larger because I wanted to work on a larger figure painting than the 20 by 26 format that I'd been using, which are these two paintings. And of course, I mentioned that these 32 by 40s were done from life. And that required being able to draw at that size. It may seem that that's an easy enough venture, but I found it challenging. And this drawing here is Susanna putting on her makeup, standing in front of a mirror. And this one is Riley Phoenix, who was an assistant of mine at the time. And this was done outdoors. The difference between these two challenges is here I have a fixed light. Indoors it doesn't move. But I need the outdoor practice because, you know, the sun moves 15 degrees every hour. And at the end of 3 hours, it's moved 45 degrees and a new painting presents itself. And that's why I say that painting the outdoors, particularly painting the figure outdoors, is a performance. You're locked into these 3-hour windows. I'll conclude by talking about some of the challenges and inspiring things that happen when I work with the figure outdoors. This painting here to the left is Audrey Fierberg. She's the daughter of good friends. And Audrey was modeling for me, and we had made this Conte crayon and white chalk drawing on a beautiful summer late afternoon where the light was just gently rippling on the water behind her. We were very excited to take that into full color. And as the weather gods would have it, we went out the next day, same time, so we have the same light window and same weather conditions, except the wind came up. And in order for Audrey to hold the pose at all, she had to stand like this. So I don't, when I have my models lined up, I don't then go away and wait for the next day. I said, well, let's make this painting. We can always go back and do the other. And we did, and I was very happy with it. We never did do the top version. The interesting thing here is so many people have said she's walking through the water, which was a very good thing for me to learn, because if I ever wanted to express that, I could see that I could do it in that manner and do it from life. Because, you know, we artists, we still movement. There's no way around it. Now, this painting, which is a friend's daughter, Doug Stanton, New York Times best-selling author, and Katie. Katie is now her last year of law school at University of Chicago. But the reason I would like to talk about this painting is that this is the kind of thing that leads to an idea for me for a painting. The towel that Katie has wrapped around her belonged to friends up in the Leelanau Peninsula, and they had, I don't know if they returned a painting, they put something in it, and I had that towel, and I looked at that towel for a week. And I'd been working with Katie, and I thought, let's see if we can't use that towel in a painting. So we went out, and Katie is a very vibrant young lady, and very, very, very bright. And there was a little bit of a chill, which can happen in northern Michigan in the evening, even on a sunny evening. She wrapped the towel around her, and I looked at that scene, and I said, that's the one I want to paint. And that's often how I find the figure work. Don't go out with preconceived ideas. I take the model out, and I just kind of let them move around a little bit until I find something that I get excited about. So I got excited about this, and we were both fairly well pleased with the end results. Sandra, I hope this is what you were expecting when you invited me to your New Orleans drawing group. One final thought. Painting the figure outdoors from life is the most challenging form of painting I do. It's extremely difficult, and it requires my highest skill sets. But after all, if it was easy, it wouldn't be fun. I look forward to the Q&A that follows and meeting you all, and thank you for visiting my studio.
Truman, I just wanted to thank you for that beautiful video that explains so much, and visuals are always great, especially to see your studio and how your different plans of sketches along the way proceed. So I'm going to open this up for anyone to have any questions of any art-related topic, and please just proceed.
Hi, this is Evelyn. Truman, you came to do a workshop for the Chicago pastel painters about a dozen years ago, and we're out there on the shore of Lake Michigan. And I want you to tell everybody what your easel looks like to produce such gigantic works of art on site. You look like Soroya out there.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I remember that workshop well. I enjoyed it thoroughly. That was through the Chicago Pastel Painters. And of course, you had a wonderful show at the Palette.
Palette and Chisel, and you gave a presentation as well the evening before.
But the easel is a great question, Evelyn. Thank you for asking that one. So it's evolved over the years. I started out with a rather heavy metal easel. I think it was called a Bogan easel. And somewhere along the line in one of the art magazines, I saw the Take It easel advertised, and it was a copy of a Cape Cod that the Cape Cod painters use themselves. One of the things about working outdoors is that you need to be able to level the easel because you're working on uneven ground often. But also, the more I went outdoors and the longer I worked outdoors, the more I looked for things that were easier. And this is a wood, it folds up into almost like a bow. And it's a wood easel, and it spreads out very well. It's three pronged. And then if I just put a rock bag, or in my case, I use actually take a weightlifter's 10-pound disc out and just put it on that easel. And sometimes even then, that isn't enough. I have to stake it down with tent stakes, because if you're working on a painting that's 32 by 40, that thing becomes like a sail in the wind. And it's, it's very challenging. So this Take It easel is the best combination of lightness. It's strong, but it's lightweight, and it can be balanced out very quickly. When I go out to paint, I don't want to spend a lot of time setting up because the light's moving, and I want to get to work as quickly as possible. Anyone else?
How do you find your models?
Another good question. I don't use professional models. They're people I meet. It's often daughters of friends, or for example, when I first moved to Traverse City, Michigan, which is in the upper part, if you know Michigan, we always hold up our hand and we say there's the mitt below and the upper peninsula, but it's in the upper left-hand corner of the Mitt. And I moved into an apartment there in what was called the Village. And the Village was the old mental hospital in Traverse City that had been closed down, and a developer bought it and was building condominiums and apartments and all kinds of shops and things like that. In any case, one of the examples of finding a model, there was a young gal that worked there, and she worked for a painting contractor, and she had a kerchief on her hair. She had this beautiful auburn colored hair, deep brown eyes. And I saw her in in her painting work clothes. It was like bib overalls and paint splattered all over. And I just thought, God, I'd love to make a painting of this person. And so, I have to be very careful approaching, people, particularly young women, and saying, I want to make a painting of you, But once they see my work on the website and they understand what I'm up to, it's usually not a problem. So I arranged, I talked to her about it, and I pay $20 or $25 an hour for them to model. And then I pay half of that fee in travel time. So it gives them an opportunity to earn money. But so just to follow through on this one story, it's kind of cute. So I think her name was Amanda. And so Amanda came to model for me, and she was dressed up to the nines to go out for the evening. And I said, it's really nice, but I wanted to paint you in your work clothes. And she made me promise that if I did one in her work clothes, that I would do another one when she was all dressed up. So we did the two paintings. And the gallery that I had my work in at the time in Northern Michigan had them both up, and they had a client come in, and he was interested in buying the one of Amanda all dressed up. And the gallery called me up and said, we're going to give you that painting back. And I said, well, why is that? And they said, well, we had this gentleman was interested in purchasing it, but his wife came in and she said, you are not going to hang that young lady in my house. So we never sold the painting, but that's one way of doing it. I just, when I first taught workshops out here in California, there was a gal that was working at a restaurant, and she just somehow the color of her hair and everything struck me, and the way she dressed. I try and get people to dress as much as possible in their own clothing, and then just accessorize with things that I have. I say kind of with a wink and a twinkle in my eye that I've bought a lot of women's clothes over the years, because at first I used to costume them up, but then I found that it was better in the long run for them to wear their own clothes and just to accessorize. Did that answer your question, or did I go on too much?
Does that give you a better sense of the person? And does that, when they're wearing their own clothing, and does that influence how you paint?
Absolutely, exactly. That's why I kind of, gravitated towards that, because a person's personality is not just in their face. It's in the clothing they wear, as you know, and also in the way they stand. And that's why I tried not to go out with preconceived ideas about how I wanted to pose them. I had a general idea, but I didn't really, say, okay, I have this really great idea for painting, and you're going to have to stand like this. Whenever I would do that, they would become very unnatural and very much not themselves. So I would have this little trick sometimes, and I would go out and I purposely would say the first 20-minute session to myself, I'm not going to, I'm really not going to begin the painting. And then we would go on break, and I would watch them, I would observe them as they walked around, and I would see something they would do that I felt was uniquely them, and perhaps also in combination with some effect of the light. So yes, the clothing was very much an important part of trying to, capture who they were. This painting back here is Allison Marshall. She was hanging laundry on her mother's line. They lived, her folks lived in Lapeer, Michigan at the time. Allison was one of 4 sisters that modeled for me. I had a really great streak with this family because the girls, when I first met them, were 13, 11, 9, and 7. And, this is hard work. This business of standing still is not natural. And with all 4 sisters, I could rotate the sisters and work with them. And this painting is the only painting that I've reacquired. Stephanie Birdsall, an artist you may all be familiar with out east, had acquired the painting out of a Pastel Society of America show. And I bumped into Stephanie maybe 15 years later, maybe longer. And she said, if you ever want to buy that painting back, I would sell it to you. And it was just about that time. Allison, of course, was then in her 30s. We lost her dad to cancer. And somebody asked me once, is it hard to give up these paintings? I said, well, not when you're trying to make a living, but honestly, it is hard. There's some of these works, there's an emotional attachment to the person. I became, in fact, for these 4 girls, I became like an uncle. And still to this day, I'm in touch with them. And I just attended one of her sister's weddings this summer in Austin, Texas. Susanna and I went down for the wedding, and it was really good to see them again after all these years. And by the way, Stephanie Birdsall did me a real favor with that. She sold it to me for the price she paid for it 20 years ago, with one condition, that I never sell the painting. But I could agree to that because I didn't want to. Yeah.
That's an exquisite painting. The shadow in it is just glorious.
Thank you. You want to, now let me share something about that. In fact,
Please.
There's an interesting thing about that shadow. Okay. So this is what happens when you paint from life. Things change. And I learned pretty quickly not to go out and take a mental picture of the very first beginning of the session and then stick with that all the way to the end. If I had taken a photo and gone back to my studio, that shadow would not have been there. That was painted on a late summer afternoon. And as the sun came down, the shadow appeared, and I put it in immediately because I saw that. I said, God, that's just fabulous, And over the years, and I was very proud of that figure, but over the years, almost everybody remarks about the shadow. So it was really fortuitous that, that happened. And that's one of the beauties about plein air painting. I mean, that sheet was blowing in the wind. There's no way to copy that. You have to express that like clouds floating by. You can't copy them if you're painting them from life. You can only express the feeling of what you see. So, but thank you for the compliment on the shadow, because I think it makes the painting, it adds a kind of, don't you feel it adds a kind of a lyrical
Absolutely.
sensitive.
Absolutely. I can remember being a kid putting the sheets on the line, and that just brings that feeling back so quickly.
Great.
It brings lovely memories. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Mhm.
I was interested when you said something about painting outside being a performance, and
Yes.
that you have to learn how to bring your painting back multiple times. And I thought you might talk to me a little bit more about that, because I can't bring it back.
Well, there are times when if it gets too far out of control, you know, you kind of crash and burn. It happens. But most of the time, the longer I've worked, and it's just like anything in life, the more you work at it or practice at it, the better you get at it. So, you know, everything is moving, and I kind of warm up to a painting when I started. I'm purposely working slower, very much trying to be extremely accurate. And as I start to win over, if I can just win over a certain area of the painting or a passage in the painting, then I can get onto a roll and a momentum. But when you're stopping every 15 minutes and then trying to start back up, that can be very challenging. And so it's like maybe a musician who's, got the audience attention and playing great, and then there's an intermission and you come back and you got to win them all over again. So sometimes I come back and that momentum I had it's just not there. I wish I could work 3 hours straight. And one of the ways I have gotten around that is to keep my energy going is I'll work on the model exclusively when she's in front of me, and then anything that touches her. And then when she's on break, I continue with the background. And then she comes back, and I used to be very strict for myself, 15 minutes. I had a timer, blah, 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 blah. Now I just work with the model. I tell them you can break anytime you want. I do have a timer for 20 minutes. I don't want them to stand longer than that. And then they come back when they want. I don't time them to come back. So yeah, I thought of it like this. I've loved music, and I just watched a performance of a young woman from Georgia in Russia, Katya Buniat-Ishvili. And she was doing Beethoven's Emperor piece. And I thought, how remarkable these musicians are that they can play a whole piece like that. Now, I have to believe that even the greatest of musicians slips a little during a performance once in a while, but they play through it. They know how to play through it, and they immediately get back getting exactly what they want to do. And so painting has become like that for me. If it slips away, I work darn hard to get it back, and I try not to let anybody see the little mistakes I make. Sometimes a mistake will happen, and it's a good mistake, and I can take credit where credit isn't due. But does that answer your question? Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, do you feel, from the performance standpoint, do you feel like an actor or a acrobat or something? Do people come up to you and say, I think when I'm painting outside, sometimes they'll come up and say, hey, are you trying to paint?
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Well,
trying
yeah,
to paint.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, by nature, we're an attraction, setting up an easel and painting outdoors. People are just naturally curious. And often I always try and be polite, and sometimes what I'll do is I'll just say, I'll pass some sentences cordially, and I'll say, now the light is moving and I have to get back to the painting, and you're welcome to watch, but I won't be able to answer questions. And that helps. But no, it's very much like a performance for me. I don't know if I feel like a musician, but whether there's an audience there or not, the performance is this 3-hour window. I mean, I have a good friend artist in northern Michigan that does not paint plein air, and he was in a plein air competition up there, and he showed me the painting and it looked nice. Didn't really have quite the effect of light I thought it could have, but I said, "How long did you work on that?" And he said, "I worked on that for about 7 hours." Well, to me, that defeats the purpose of plein air painting. You're trying to capture light, and you have these windows, and that's your performance. And I make my mind up right when I go out, whether I want to have my performance end in one 3-hour session, or if I want to put more into the painting, like those big 32 by 40s, there's no way I can do that painting in 1 hour. Okay. And, so I have to go out at the same time of day with the same kind of weather condition. So I can't continue that painting. If it's a sunny day painting, I can't continue that painting on a cloudy day. Often with the models or with the young women that I work with, I have 2 paintings going at once, a cloudy day painting and a sunny day painting. And that way, when we go out, no matter what the weather does, I can work on one of the 2 paintings.
Can you say if you also have with you the tides table? Because the water comes in at different times of the day, depending on where the moon is, right?
Well, I don't have that so much in Michigan because the Great Lakes aren't as affected by the tides as they are here. And yeah, there's a little clip. If you go on my website, down at the bottom of the homepage, you'll see a little clip of me. It's actually moving. It's a little video of me painting a figure in Cambria here in California, and the tides start coming in, and I mean, there's a point where I'm actually holding the easel because this is a pastel painting. If it goes down, it's gone. It's it. So but it was well worth the effort. We got a great painting out of that. And yeah, I do pay attention to the tides. I look at the tide tables and things like that because I don't want to get chased out. If, I don't want to start a painting and then 20 minutes later, the tides come up so far that I can't work on the painting anymore. So
or the model's up to her waist.
Right. Well, in this case, I had the concept for the painting was we actually wanted her in the surf because I had this idea of that the surf looked to me like white snow, and I love painting my winter paintings. And I thought, let's see if we just do something there. So, we did have a little bit of a limited time frame for that, but the idea is as much as possible stay in these 3-hour windows. And then so that's a performance, it's like, you go to hear your favorite singer or jazz club and whatever, and they play a piece and boom, it's done. And all of the hard work, the hundreds of drawings I've done before I got outdoors, that's all just preparatory work. Those drawings aren't finished any more than they are because they're all starts. They're starts so that when I get out there, I get a great start. If I can get a great start, if I can lay it in and get a good feel for the figure, and then then I'm off and running, and colors always been something that's been in kind of, it's instinctual for me. So I don't struggle with color. In fact, I work better in color than I do in black and white and tone. For some reason, I just feel more comfortable with it.
Question. You spoke earlier about time, the time you have a timer for 20 minutes max, but let the model up for as long as she wants to be there, 10 or 15 minutes or plus, and then she takes a break or for however long, and then comes back when she's ready. What's your timetable for that? Is that still a 3-hour window?
Oh yeah, that's all within the 3 hours. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. See, one of the things I like to let them know is I said, if you're uncomfortable or if you don't feel well, if you're, it's going to come across in my painting. I'm that sensitive, you're going to, I'll feel I won't even know it. It'll show up. So I say to them, this isn't like, I'm not like a photographer and I'm going to yell, you moved. No, because they are going to move. And every time they come back, they're going to be different. So I say, you could just relax. I have little ways of, sometimes I'll put little tent stakes where I want their feet to go. But I also want them, it's a little bit embarrassing to tell this story, but I was teaching in Petoskey, Michigan one time, and it was a big group, and we had 2 models because I don't like to get more than about 9, 10 people on a model. We were outdoors in the summer, and I'm working with one group, and I look over and I see the young lady, and she goes down from heat exhaustion. And then I look over to the one I'm with, and that one goes down. And that was pretty early on. And I learned if I don't let them be in control, they can get into trouble. They know when they don't feel well. And that's why I let them do that, So much as possible, we work 20 minutes and about 5 off. But if they say, geez, I just have to move, I want them to, that's why I want them to be in control. I want them to feel well and not, be, jiggling and whatever because they've been holding the pose too long. Plus, I want them to come back. So I want them to have fun. Yeah, the whole idea is I've had a lot of fun over the years too. Sometimes it's been excruciating for me as a painter, but this is another one of my repertoire of jokes that I have in here. Does anyone here know why plein air painting is a lot like opera? Well, good. I hope. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, good question.
Okay. Because a lot like operas and by the way, I love opera. Plein air painting, you can have some glorious 3 minutes and some excruciatingly long 3 hours. Yeah. So it just, sometimes you just can't get it all together. You go out, I used to paint 3, 6, 8 hours a day outdoors. I can't do that anymore physically. So, but much better lifestyle. Paint 3 hours and come in and have a glass of wine. So.
Could you talk a little bit about your pastel kit when you go out to paint?
Absolutely. So when I first started working with pastel, I had 1,000 colors. And I had boxes and big table laid out and all kinds of boxes of pastels. And because I thought if I had just the right color, I could do the right thing. Eventually, through practice and experience, I began to develop the idea that it wasn't a matter of having just the right color, as it was doing the right thing with the colors I had. An analogy would be, think of all the great music that's been written for piano, and there's only 88 keys. So I have a pastel box. You can go on my website. If you go to the workshop area, you can click on it and you can see a photo of my pastel box open. And it's a friend at the time and his wife were making a thing called a take it easel. I know, what was it called? Easel Pal. And it was for oil painters to open up on a French easel and give them more working space. And I just noticed at the time that my pastel foam inserts were just the right level to put my pastels on there. So then I narrowed it down to about 350 colors. I have 350 colors that sometimes I'll pull a color out that I don't use a lot and I'll bring a new one in that I use that I think will help me solve my problems. I use the same box, whether I'm doing a still life or a figure or a landscape. And so I just have this way now of making the pastels work for me. So that's it, 350, about 350 colors, yeah. And then they're in this very portable box, and here it is again, practicality in terms if you're going to work outdoors, you know.
Question related to the pastel. Do you have a specific brand or hardness, softness, whatever that you like?
I started out with almost predominantly Rembrandt pastels early on, and I've been working with pastels exclusively now since maybe the mid 90s, so almost 30 years. And I always, I was trained as an illustrator, so I could use oils or watercolors, and I'm always, I'm going to do that. I'm going to go out and do a watercolor day. And I look at that pastel box and I'm like, no, I love those colors so much. I lost track. What was the question?
Do you have a particular brand
Oh, yeah.
or
Okay, so
hardness, whatever?
Yeah, well, first, that's another great question. So I started out with predominantly Rembrandts. And 30 years ago, one of the problems that I had with painting from life is there weren't enough darks. In order to go dark enough to get the range of values I needed to paint different scenarios, I often had to use black and put color on top of it. I found that Sennelier had dark colors. So then I started incorporating some Sennelier. Then I needed kind of a hard pastel with a sharp edge because I like to use the side of the stick. So then I incorporated some new pastel. And then Terry Ludwig came along, and I loved his colors, and he started making darker colors. Unison Pastel has great colors. So often I would choose some new pastels based on not a brand because it was that brand, but because it helped me solve a problem or fill a hole in my box, value and color-wise. One of the keys to painting outdoors for me was to understand that value is crucial. And so, for example, for me, white is a key. If you have a man in a white shirt and it's a sunny day, value 10 being white and 0 being black, your white is going to be up there at that 10. If it's a cloudy day, it can't be the same value because there's now an overcast sky that's reducing it. And if on, say, a moonlit night, if you really want to tell the effect of light, a middle gray painted in the dark enough background looks white. So that's a value of 5. And so I will choose these pastels, but now, so my box now includes new pastel, Rembrandt's, Unison, Sennelier, and Ludwig. And I love every one of those colors that are in there, you know. And I do not start a painting out saying this is a hard pastel. I'm going to start with hard. I'll even start with there's a Sennelier 45 deep red, dark red. And I love it. It's a red brown and I love that color. And I use sanded paper, Lux Archival. It's a very, I use the 400 grit because again, I like to use the side of the stick and get like a dry brush mark if I can. And that, I put that Sennelier on there, on that pure white, and it just about disintegrates the stick in 2 seconds. Yeah, but I don't care, frankly. I just want to get to where I want to go.
Thanks.
Truman, we're just at the top of the hour now. And if you are comfortable with staying on a little longer, we'll see if there's any more questions. Sandra is having internet issues.
Yeah, I'd be happy to stick around. I would like, Sandra, I would like to just at the very end, because we're coming up onto the holidays, the Thanksgiving holiday. I would like to share one of the stories of my work at Children's. Now, at Children's Hospital, I would go in and do these white chalk and Conte crayon drawings. We couldn't do pastel in there because we couldn't get the dust all over. And I would do these in 4 15-minute segments and let the child watch TV. But I would like to just talk about that work and what an artist can do, you know, with their talent.
Please do.
So right when we're ready to quit, just give me, it's about a 2-minute story.
Okay, well, let's see. Does anyone else have any additional questions for Truman? Okay.
Good. Oh, that's fine.
Why don't you head into that story then?
Okay, so I was in my mid-40s and I had had a very lucrative career as an illustrator, not only financially, but in terms of assignments. I'd had great assignments and things. And computers came rushing in and I moved into fine art, plein-air painting. And I'd spent a lifetime trying to figure out how to make money with my art. And I just felt like I needed to do something with my talent that wasn't about selling it, either through teaching or selling of paintings or whatever. And a friend of mine, she had these Afghan hounds, and she was working with the Children's Hospital of Detroit, doing pet therapy. And she said, well, you know, they have a great volunteer services program. Why don't you talk to them? And I thought about it. I remember reading a story about Bettina Steinke, and she had gone in. She was the first woman admitted to the Society of Illustrators. And she had gone in with some of the illustrators during World War II and was drawing charcoal portraits in 1 hour in the hospitals. So I went to the child life psychology department and I told them what I said. I have this idea of doing these portraits of these kids in bed. And I had to go through about a month's training. And so let me cut to the chase. So at first I could barely get them done in 4 15-minute periods. You know, And sometimes I had to cut them short, you know, because I couldn't get them quite done. Eventually, I was getting them done in just a little over 2 15-minute periods. And I got to know the nursing staff, and I got to know a lot of these young children, and they were, in the face of their illness, they were remarkably bright and happy and resilient. But one day, and child life psychology would give me the names of these kids. I could do about 4 of them a day, because when medical staff came in, I had to leave the room. Their work was much more important than mine, of course. So I get about 4 done. About the 3rd one on this particular day, I went into the young man's room, and he just looked really down. And I explained to him what I wanted to do. And he had, I think he had sickle cell anemia, and he was not going to survive. But eventually, just after a few minutes, I said, you know, why don't you let me draw your portrait, you know? So I did. And I used to do it in this way. Anybody in the room, the parents and staff, anybody could look and whatever, but I never let the child see it till I was done. I wanted this ta-da moment, a little bit of a showman, I guess, but I just thought it would be great. So I finished his portrait, and I turned it around, and I said, here it is. And I'd gotten pretty good. They were good likenesses. If you could have seen the smile on that child's face. So I signed it, and I always signed it, put a piece of acetate on it, taped it on the wall. That was his drawing and his family's drawing. I walked out, and the nurse pulled me aside. She said, Mr. Hosner, he's been here 6 weeks and he hasn't smiled. That's the first time he smiled.
Oh,
That's when I knew that I was there for a reason, that my talent had value that went beyond money. Money can't buy that smile. So that's my story for Thanksgiving. So you can do that too. You can use your talent.
Wonderful story.
well,
Thank you.
that's
Thank
an
you all for
extraordinary story.
Thank you for having me this evening. I'm happy that you're working with the figure, and I thank Sandra for inviting me. And I wish you all a very happy holidays and a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Truman.
Thank you. We're
very
thrilled
much.
that